So hi everyone. I'm giving Zoom a minute to let people in, and then we will start with the webinar. Okay, numbers look stable. So I think everyone that was here on time has been let in. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar called Insights into JobRouter 26.1. That's the new release that's coming up soon. And today I would like to give you some insights into what you can expect with this release. Let's start with some organizational infos first. So as you know, if you take part in our webinars, quite often you notice by default all participants are automatically muted, so you can't talk to me. What you can do, however, is you can use the chat and you can use the Q&A option to ask questions that you come up with throughout the webinar, and I will answer them at the end if we still have time. I did the same thing in German this morning. Since we have a lot of things to show, there might not be time to answer all questions at the end, but I will try. So if you have some, please put them into the chat or put them into the Q&A section. After this webinar, probably at some point this afternoon, you will receive an email containing first the link to the webinar itself, to the recording, so you can watch it again if you want, or if you missed something, if you come in later, you can watch it again. It will also contain the slides from this webinar as a PDF file, and it will contain a feedback form. I'm happy to get your feedback. If you watched this webinar, if there was something that you liked or something we can improve, please leave us some feedback so that we can do better next time. So that's me. I'm the moderator for this webinar. Most of you, I think, know me. I'm the Director R&D now since we joined Aptian. So what it basically means is I am responsible for the development department, head of development department. I'm also in product management, and I'm mainly responsible for this JobRouter version that comes out now. And I'm excited to show you all the new stuff that we have in there. This is the agenda for today. We have one slide basically just with the highlights, where I will just quickly introduce the top 5 features of this release. Those are the features we will also see in the live demo. So I think like 80–90% of this webinar will actually be a live demo. I'm not the biggest fan of slides. I would like to show stuff live if we can. So that's what you will see today. There's also a section on new features in detail. They are mostly for the handout or the email that you get at the end, so that you have some information to take with you. That's not just a slide saying highlight and a slide saying live demo. And last but not least, the last slide is just some details about the release, like the release date. So let's start with the highlights. So these are our top 5, basically. Number 1, for this JobRouter version 26.1, we support the use of AI agents in workflows. So we have a system activity that you can use to connect JobRouter, to connect your workflow to our own JobRouter AI agent that has access to JobRouter data and can therefore help you in your workflow to execute specific tasks. We will see how that works later on. We have an update for modern forms. These are mostly, the new features are mostly about translations, about data sources, and about the JavaScript API. We have a new feature for our remote client, previously known as remote database client. We have extended this to support files as well. That's why we also renamed it to remote client. You will see later what that means and what kind of features are in there. We also have an update for JobRouter for Outlook. That's our Outlook add-in that you can use to archive your current email or an attachment of that email to your JobRouter archive, or you can upload it to the document hub. And starting from 26.1, you can also start workflows from that Outlook add-in. You will see how that looks later on. And last but not least, it's a more technical feature, but I know we also have technical people on this webinar, so you will be interested to know the updates for our REST API version 3, including some new REST routes for user management. That will come at the end. And we will start with AI agents, mostly because it's our top highlight feature in this version. So let me switch my screen to my JobRouter. So we had a couple of webinars also about this topic, about AI itself. So chances are you are seeing this now for the second or even the third time, but maybe there's one or two of you that haven't seen it yet. So I will talk about it. I will show you the AI feature that we have specifically planned for 26.1. We have more on our roadmap and more that we are currently working on, maybe more that you have seen already also, but this is the one that will end up in 26.1. And as I mentioned, it's a system activity you can use to talk to our JobRouter AI agent. And first off, I will show you how that works in the simulation so that you can get a feel for it. So what I've picked here is a very common use case, I think for most of you. It's imagine you have an invoice approval workflow. Somewhere at the beginning, the data, invoice line items are extracted automatically, hopefully, from that document. And then there's like an approval process. And at some point, that workflow ends up with the accounting department. And their job, amongst others, is it to do to assign GL accounts to each line item. And that's normally a manual job. It's not very good to it's not very well automated. You can't really automate it very well. Mostly because it's text, it's free text. You have to somehow assign, you have to somehow understand and assign to a specific GL account. And you can automate it with scripts up to a certain point, but never really like 100%. And AI is a really good tool to look at for this specific task because AI can understand text. And if they can work with your data, with your master data, and even with your historical data that you have in JobRouter, it can very well fulfill that task that an automated script couldn't do. So this is bunch of line items there in German. It doesn't matter. It's basically electronic parts and labor. And we have the description, quantity, and some amounts. I will send this off now. And I will send this off now to our AI agent. Let me find the right step, this one. This is our system activity, which will take a minute. So I can explain to you what happens now. I will show you the configuration and the system activity configuration later. But what happens now is we are sending this task, a specific prompt to our AI agent, telling it to please suggest a account assignment proposal for each line item. And what we give it is access to our data in JobRouter. That's something that normal AI agents don't have. They don't have access to JobRouter data. This one does have access to your JobRouter data. And we tell it to look up the matching GL account. And also we tell us why it decided to pick that specific GL account. So that's what comes back basically. So we have the account filled. So that's a drop-down list. That's the master data. And it picked an account from this master data. And it also told us why it picked that specific account. So I've asked it to explain, especially because at the beginning of a project, if you start with this the first time, you will have to practice with the prompts a bit to make sure you really tell it the correct prompts to deliver the correct answers. That's something that you have to work on. Maybe you also have to work on adding more quality to your master data, stuff like this. So it's really something that you need to do at the beginning. That's this whole concept of human in the loop. You need to, at the beginning, you need to watch what the agent is doing, perfect your prompts basically, and then at the end, it can do the work itself. So in that case, it selected the accounts based on the description up here. As I mentioned, it's electrical components and it's labor. So for example, it's at the item monteur, that's a technician, refers to direct labor costs, so it's selected labor costs. So it tries to reason as well. This one is allocated the cost of raw material. That didn't quite match, so that's something that we have to work on with the agent itself. So what does it look like in JobRouter itself, the system activity? So that was just this part that did the whole work. That's the activity that connects to our agent. And basically what you give this agent is two things. You have to give it a task to do. That's basically the prompt that you know from, if you work with AI, you know that you have to prompt it to do something. So in that case, the task was basically just create an account assignment proposal for GL account allocation based on historical data and master data available in the system. Use only the GL accounts available in the master data, enter the GL accounts and the corresponding text codes. It also filled out the text codes for each line item, justify your selection for each line. That was the prompt that I did, and that's what the agent actually did. So that's number one. You need to provide the prompt. You need to provide the task it should do. And the second thing you need to provide is the data, because of course we don't give the agent access to all of the data in JobRouter. It doesn't really work that way. It doesn't really deliver a good output if you just give it access to everything. It's much better to give it access to the specific data it needs for this specific task. So the first thing, of course, is workflow data. As you can imagine, an invoice approval workflow has like 100, 500 fields. For the GL account proposal, it actually only needs the line items. So what I will give it are the line items. I don't give it like the invoice number or the invoice date. It doesn't matter, just the line items. That way I can make sure, and even just the information from the line items, it needs to do the work. And that's how I can make sure it doesn't accidentally grab data that's not relevant for the task and maybe confuse it with the relevant data. So that's what I do here. I have the option to assign process table fields to the agent and subtable fields. And this is basically my subtable that I just saw. And what it also does is the same section also tells the agent where to return the data from to. So that's my subtable. For example, the title was the article name that it got to do the work. And the reason and thoughts, that's the column where it returned its reasoning. So that's basically that kind of data it works with, the workflow data itself, the context it has for this specific task. And then, of course, I also need to give it access to master data. Master data that usually exists in JobRouter in the form of job select reports, also in the form of maybe job data and archive views. Right now, we have access to reports and archive views, not job data. That will come later. But if you have a report called master data, you can assign it to the agent, and the agent will actually be able to execute that report, extract the data from that report, and use that data to do its task. And also important here, of course, is to restrict access to really only the reports it needs for its specific task. Usually you have like 50 or more job select reports in your system, maybe even, for example, HR reports. You don't want this agent whose only job is to do an account match proposal. You don't want this agent to actually access your HR data, for example, and accidentally use it for something. So that's why you have this selection here. You can say, I want this, this, and this for the agent to use. And that's basically it. That's the context you give it. That's the prompt. And that's basically it. That's the whole magic of that activity. The actual work is done by the agent in the backend. And if you are familiar with JobRouter, you can imagine that this actually is quite powerful and quite flexible also, because you can enter any kind of prompt that you want, and you can give it any kind of data that you have in your system to work with, and the agent will just do its task. So that's quite neat, I think, all in all. So that's the first thing we will deliver now with our AI package. More features will come in later, 26.2, maybe even earlier. We will have to check. We had a whole webinar for our AI roadmap. So today I only have like 15 minutes to tell you everything, because this is a webinar for 26.1 and not for AI. But if you are interested and you haven't seen it yet, please take a look at our website, where you can find, in the info center, you can find recordings of past webinars. And we did one for AI and JobRouter 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, where we go more into detail about how does it work, and what's the technical background, and also, things like licensing and stuff like this. This is all explained in that specific webinar. You can request the recording here. If you haven't actually joined that webinar itself, just go ahead and request a recording, and you can find more information and also more demos about things to come. For now, this was just the first step that's available in 26.1. One important thing also to mention is that this activity, the system activity, will be available first in our cloud, in our JobRouter cloud, mainly because we are still at the beginning. We need to get experience with the quality of the answers that we get, with the performance that we have and stuff like this. So in our cloud, we have the option to react much more quickly and efficiently if you want to change something. That's why for the first half year, at least, it will be cloud only and cloud first. And then I think second half of the year, we will also, once this has a certain quality in it, a certain stability, we will also provide this for customers on-prem. For now, it's cloud first and cloud only. And then in like 6 months or so, it will be also available for on-prem. If you are currently on-prem and you think, but I want to test it now, I want to see how it works, we will provide this also for our demo environments, for our demo clouds. So feel free to go ahead and request a demo cloud for your company, for yourself. This is where you can then test a bit, see what the AI agent can do, what it can work with, stuff like this. So in the demo environment, you can do this already. Not today, but as soon as we release this, the 26.1 demo cloud version, then you can already experience our AI agent a bit, and you don't have to wait 6 months until we enable this for on-prem customers. So that's number one. Highlight number 1 out of 5. The next one I want to talk about is modern forms. So especially data sources in modern forms. Data sources are our alternative or replacement in the future, at least, for SQL elements, with the intention to in the future enable more than just SQL data sources, but also maybe REST APIs and stuff like that. So the common construct for this is called what we call data sources. For now, we support databases, so REST API will come later, but the data sources are already there. We released them in 25.2 for the first time, and we added some new features now that I think you will like, and that's what I wanted to show you. So I've made up a small scenario, which is based on 2 job data tables. So I have a job data table with countries and country codes, and I have a job data table with vendors. And the scenario I want to set up is a small form, a drop-down list of countries. I select a specific country. It refreshes the list of vendors, shows me all vendors from that selected country. And if I then select a vendor, it shows me details of that specific selected vendor. That's a scenario I want to set up here based on these 2 job data tables. So what does it look like? First off, I need to, based on those two job data tables, I need to create the data sources in my workflow. So I have three of them here. I will use them to explain you the concept. So first off is the countries. As I mentioned, I want to have a drop-down list that lists me all of the countries that I can select one, and then the vendor list is refreshed. So what I do here is I have a data source of type job data. I can select the job data table I want to use in my data source. So it's the country codes one. I can select the columns I want to use for that data source. So that the country codes table has like 10 different columns. I only really need two of them in my workflow. So I only specify those two. It's kind of a performance thing. If I don't need the whole table, I don't need to import the whole table in my workflow. So we only specify the columns we want, which are the country code, the name in English and German. And since that table is actually quite long, I decided to filter it down a bit to only show countries from a specific continent. Continent was one of the columns in that table. So in that case, I only want to show countries from Europe. And as you can see on the right side here, it was already opened when I entered. So this is kind of a preview so that you can see what your data set for that data source will look like. So I could, for example, go and change the filter quickly. So these are Europe, but if I want to see all countries from Asia, it will refresh immediately and show me all countries from Asia. Go back to Europe because that's the one I want. Also, I can play a bit with the column transformations. So here I have actually two columns for English and German, but I could also say I want the one column that gives me the English name and maybe the German name as well. So that's this one. And if I do this, the preview also automatically refreshes. So that's a good way for me to to see the data set before I actually use it in my workflow. I won't change anything now because it was good as it was. So basically, that's a data source that accesses the country codes job data table, pulls the country code and the English-German name, and filters everything down to countries from Europe. So I don't have to write any kind of SQL statement. It's all done like like a click show, basically. So that's the first one. That's my first data source. Then I mentioned what I want to have is a list of vendors based on the country I selected. So I created a new data source, called it vendors of a country. It accesses the vendors, job data tables. In that case, again, this table had like 10, 20 columns. What I need for my list later on is just the name and the ID. So that's the columns I specify. And I also need to specify a filter because I want to only show vendors from a specific country. So I need a filter that goes to the country column. Only in that case, I don't want to specify like a fixed filter. I want to get the country that it is later selected in my form. So I can't actually say I can't say here get all vendors from Germany because in the workflow itself, in the form, it could be a different country. So what I use here is something we call a parameter. I can specify a parameter that I can later map to a specific workflow form field in my workflow. And of course, if I want to test this now in my preview, it's empty because I haven't actually specified the parameter. But my preview is able to actually simulate this scenario as well. So if I want to see all vendors from Germany, that would be the E as the shortcut. So this is what my list would later show me. These are the vendors from Germany. So we close this now. So that's my second data source, basically all vendors filtered by country. So, and the third one is vendor details. as I mentioned, now when I select the country, I select the vendor in that country, and then I want to see the vendor details written into specific fields in my form. So I have a third data source called vendor details. Again, I specify the columns I need. In that case, I want to show the address somewhere, the city, the ID, and just for, showcase the create date. And the filter at that point is based on the identifier. LEE stands for legal entity identifier. That's the ID of that table. And I get this from the ID parameter again. So I have a data source with a parameter that the filter is based on, and that ID parameter will later be filled also in the form itself to create the actual real SQL statement in the backend. So that's the data sources. Now I will show you how that actually transfers to the workflow itself. So I have a small form here to better visualize what I meant. So we have I will change this quickly, country, save. I have a section here or I have a field here, a drop-down list where I can select, where the user can select the country. So that's my drop-down list of all countries from Europe, if you remember. So this is basically just a drop-down list, and I can specify the data source here that it should connect to. And the data source in my case is countries. That's how I named my data source. I can specify the display value and stored value. If you have worked with JobRouter before, you know that our drop-down lists are basically always two values, the one that's displayed and the one that's actually stored in a database. That's what you can select here from the data source. So since we are now the English webinar, let me select English. So that's the English name of the country. The country code is the one that will actually be stored. And I want to sort that list also by English country name. So that's my drop-down list. That didn't have any parameters, so I can just configure the list itself. Now I have my vendor list, which also, of course, needs a data source. In that case, a data source is vendors of a country. The name I want to display is the name of the vendor. The ID to be stored is the ID of the vendor. I sort it by name. And now, of course, this one has a parameter, a reference to another form field. And in that case, I can specify that form field here. So that's my parameter country. And the value I want to get from select country. That's the field here, just one field above. That's the one I want to reference to. So that's the one I select. And that's how it knows that these two fields basically belong together. And the same is now with the vendor details. If I take address, for example, I have the data source. Here it comes from vendor details. I have specified 4 columns in that data source. So address is the one I want to map to this text area. And the parameter, the reference I want to get my actual vendor ID from is the select vendor field. That's the one up here. So that's the one, if I select this, the address will be selected based on what I select from the vendor. So that's how this works like. And to show you this in the simulator, I will open this quickly, make it a bit smaller. So that's the form now in the simulator. As you can see, the vendor is empty because I haven't selected the country yet. If I choose, let's say, France as the country, you saw a quick loading spinning icon. That meant the vendor list has now been retrieved from the backend from the database. If I select another country, let's take Austria, again, has been retrieved. It's a different list of vendors. Now, if I go back to France, I think it was, if you were quick enough, you could see no loading layer because we have selected this list before and we cached it. So that's quite a neat feature that we have in the future, that especially for those lists that refresh, depending on another list or another text box, for example, we store the data in the browser. So when we need the same list a second time, we don't get it from the backend again, we just get it from the front end. So that's a lot quicker than it was in the past, where we had to do like a SQL refresh every single time. So that's one of the cool features here. So let me now select a vendor. And once I selected the vendor, all the other details from that vendor that I connected to the vendor details data source have been retrieved as well. So the internal identifier, the address, city, and the date. And here you can also see two cool features that we will have in the future. I don't know if you noticed, but number one is that we, for the SQL elements, if you remember in the classic forms, what we had were SQL text boxes and SQL lists and checkbox. And now you can map pretty much every input field with data sources. So we now have the option to also fill like a date element from the database and a text area from the database. We can also fill like decimal and integer fields from the database. So we are not restricted to text boxes anymore, which is, I think, quite a nice feature for the future that we have been asked a lot of times to provide. So that's number one. And number two is, as you could see, when I change the vendor, it refreshes all the data automatically. And if I go back to my form, for example, as you can see here, no, I need this one. As you can see here, I don't have any scripts. So usually you would expect like a JR SQL refresh, right, to update all the pending fields that should be updated after I change the vendor. In that case, that's not necessary anymore because JobRouter knows. Since we are using data sources and we specify the parameter in data sources and you have to map the parameter in your form fields, JobRouter already knows what kind of field references which other field. So we can automatically refresh the fields, the connected fields, when the value of one of the fields changes. So that's in the future, that's a much quicker way to design workflows. If you don't have to do the refresh yourself, JobRouter will handle this for you. So that's, I think, quite a cool feature we can agree on. And that's it basically for data sources. So as I mentioned, they already existed in 25.2. What we have added in this current version is the reference option, the parameter, and the possibility to connect data sources to also elements like date and decimal and integer and stuff like this. That also didn't exist before that option. So those are the new features for 26.1, and data sources have been introduced first time in 25.2. Another quick feature I want to show for forms, you may have noticed at the beginning, we have also introduced translations to modern forms. So you can now translate your form into multiple languages. And this is done, can be done here, for example. As you can see, this is a label for select country. If I remove this, you have two options. You can just give it like a fixed label. Then you don't have to make the effort to translate stuff. You can just use a fixed label. That's possible. That will be shown in the same translation basically for every language. Or you can work with translations. And as you can see here, let's take vendor. These are all the translations already present in my system. I can just search for them by translation ID or by the actual translation. And then I can select them for the label of my current field. So that's possible. I can also add new translation directly from this menu. I can change existing translations. That's also possible. And there's also a whole menu of translations where you can see what kind of translations exist in this system. So that's this one. You can see all the languages that are available with their translations, and you can even see where this specific translation is used in that workflow. So you can also see that. So that's a translation feature that I also didn't want to hide from you. And that's it for what I can show for forms for modern forms. We have some more features, which you can see in our release note. It's mostly about JavaScript API, new functions that we supported. But these are the visual features I wanted to show you. And that was highlight number 2. And I can see I'm slightly past halftime. So let's be quick for the next ones. The third highlight is called remote client. So for that, let me log into this system here. So if you are a cloud customer, or if you have customers, if you're a partner and you have customers in our cloud, you may know our module called remote database. We have had that for a couple of years now, and it's basically meant to let you retrieve data from a local database in your company from within your JobRouter workflow that's running in the cloud. So you could do that using VPN, but most of the customers in our cloud don't have VPN connection. So if they still want to connect to a local database to use the local data in their workflows, they can use remote database, our module. And up until recently, it only supported database connections, and with 26.1, it will also support file transfers. So for this configuration tool here has been adapted to, a new section has been added for directories. So here you can specify directories on your local server. Like these are the ones that I will use right now. It's called demo in and demo out. So these are local paths on that server, and the remote, I've closed it now. The remote client connects those local directories to the JobRouter server that's running in the cloud. And the connection works in both ways. Number one, it works in job start. So we have the option to upload files from a local system to the cloud and start workflows with them. So that's basically what job start is doing. So the configuration for that would be here. So we manage file imports. That's the one that I'm using now, called demo in. And it's basically the same job start configuration you're used to for all your normal needs, your normal workflows. The only difference is that if you are in our cloud and you have specified local directories, you can select them here. So these are the local directories local to the cloud. And these are the remote directories. So demo in is the one that I'm using for this demo here. Everything else stays the same. Only now job start will look at the local folder to start workflows. I will do that now. There's my system. So that's the document, the PDF document that I want to upload. This is demo in, the job start folder, or the folder that's monitored basically by job start. So it will pick up the document in a second. Takes about 10 seconds, I think, the cycle to check. There it is. And then it will start a workflow that I will go to now. It's called demo something, demo remote file. So that's the workflow that is started right now. Let me check my inbox to see if it's already there. I think it will come in a minute. So that's the job start that's triggering this workflow. And we also have the other way, basically, not the input, but also the output way. So if you have a workflow running in our cloud and you are creating files and you want to download them to your local server to do something with them, to send them to an ERP system, for example, or to send them to a printer, whatever. You can also do that now. For this, we have a new system activity. I've added it to the same workflow, so you can see the whole showcase. So this is a system activity that basically where it only has one function called transfer files to remote client. You can choose the directory, the remote directory that's configured on your local system. That's the directory where you want these files to end up. So in that case, it's demo out. And you only have to specify the input parameter, which is a file from the process table or from the subtable. And as output, what you get is the transfer status. Especially if something doesn't work, this is where you will get the error message. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So let me check if this one has now arrived. So that's the one that Job Start has picked up and sent to me. That's the document here. So let me add another one. Let me add an image. Send this off. And this will now be downloaded to the local client. And download means basically we pick up the process table file and the subtable file, and we both send them to the local server. So if I go into demo out, both these files that I had in my workflow should show up here in a second or like half a minute. There they are. So this is how you download those files. So in the workflow itself, it behaves quite naturally, like you would expect with the job start and with a system activity. And the remote client is the one doing all the work, uploading files, downloading files. So that's how you can, in the future, work with file inputs and outputs in our between our cloud system and your local system without VPN, without FTP. So it's a direct connection between your JobRouter, cloud JobRouter, and your local system. That's remote client, which we have renamed because it's now doing more than just remote database. So we renamed it to remote client. And that's the feature you can expect with 26.1. That was feature number 3. Number 4, JobRouter for Outlook. So let me close these to clear up this a bit. That's this JobRouter. Okay. So JobRouter for Outlook is our Outlook add-in that you can use. Let me see where it is here. It's a official Outlook Microsoft Store add-in that you can use to. Until now, you could use it to upload your emails or attachments from that emails to the document hub or to a job archive. And now, starting from 26.1, you can also upload it to start a workflow. So in that case, I have 2 workflows enabled here. I will show you in a minute how this is configured. I have 2 workflows enabled here. One is called Purchase Invoice. That's one of the workflows I can start using the Outlook add-in. And I have a couple of fields that are pre-selected, predefined, like the subject, from, and received, and stuff like this. And here I can select what I want to upload. I can upload the whole email. I can upload the email including attachments, or I can upload only a specific attachment. In that case, I want to start an invoice workflow, so I will only pick the invoice. And what I can also do, I can select a category, that's like an Outlook category, that this email should be marked with after the upload has been done. I will show this in a minute. So I will start this process. It takes a second. Yeah, process started successfully. The marker has been set. So that's the Outlook category that I selected. The idea of that is that you can mark your emails with, I have already uploaded this, so you don't accidentally upload it again. So that's how you can mark your emails. And the Outlook add-in basically just does the rest. And if I go into JobRouter to prove to you that this has actually worked, that workflow only has 1 step for demo purposes, so it will be finished already. That's the newest one. We are 1 hour behind, so that's the one we are talking about. And as you can see, that's the text. That's basically the text from my email, and that's the attachment that was uploaded. And the configuration looks like this. It's basically a module configuration called JobRouter for Outlook. Manage process start. So this one is new in 26.1. And you can define, that's purchase invoice. What you can define here is which process to start, which step to start, and you can assign a job function for it. Because of course you don't want, everyone from your company to be able to start the invoice process with any kind of email. You want to assign it to a specific job function where maybe only accounting people are members of. So you assign a job function, though that's the people who are in those job functions see this specific entry in the Outlook add-in, and there's also field assignment. So from the data that you have in your email, like the subject and the title and the email text and so on, you can also you can already fill in process table fields with that data. It's mapped automatically. So that's the configuration, and depending on what job function you are a member of, you can then see in your Outlook add-in, you can see different workflows that you can start. So that's a new feature for the Outlook add-in itself. The Outlook add-in has been introduced, I think also summer or late last year. So it already exists. Only the new feature now is being able to start workflows. You need a license for this. You can get the Outlook add-in from the store, of course. It doesn't cost anything in the store itself. But then if you try to connect to your JobRouter, you will notice you don't have a license. So to use this, you actually need like an Outlook, like a JobRouter for Outlook license in JobRouter. That's number 4. And now last but not least, quite good in time, REST API. So let me use this one. Go back to my JobRouter / REST. So more specifically, REST API version 3 has been introduced also with 25.2 last year. It has some new features now, but since I think we didn't have a chance to talk about this REST API version 3 yet, I wanted to take the time, also a couple of minutes here, to show you what's new and what's happening. So we have a new version of our REST API, a new version that is based on a public API standard called Open API specification. It's like an international standard that defines how APIs should be written, how they should be defined, that they should have, error codes, that they should have input fields, output fields, stuff like this. So that's it's like a public specification that you can decide to follow, which we did with version 3. It enables us to, number one, offer this specification file for customers. So let me open this. It's basically a JSON file that defines or that specifies how, what our API looks like. Not now. And it's basically this kind of format. So it specifies what kind of REST routes do I have in my API, what kind of components are in there, what kind of tags are in there. It's all very specific to APIs. That's the OpenAI API standard. And the advantage of this, of following this specification and of having this spec file is 2 things. Number one, we can offer a nice documentation like this. If you remember our old documentation, it was kind of handmade, so to speak. This one is created automatically based from our OpenAPI JSON file. So it can look like this with the with the samples and stuff like this. You can see what kind of responses do I have, what do they look like. You can see a much nicer overview of what the parameters are. If I go to the new routes that we have selected now, create new user, for example, you can also see examples that we have added, examples for the response codes that you can get, which makes it much easier for you also to work with that API. And you can also use this specification file. For example, in Postman, if you have Postman, if you are working with APIs regularly, Postman. It's kind of a tool to also test API requests and stuff. And Postman is able to import those specification files, it recognizes it's an Open API specification, and then you can decide to input it as a collection actually, or as the specification itself, which is basically just the documentation that we just saw ourselves, that we have ourselves. So what you want to do is you want to input it as collection. And once you imported this, you can click through here and you can actually go and look at how the requests look like. For example, this is the one to create a new user. It's already prepared for you, so you could use this. The header is prepared, the body is prepared. So you could even use this to quickly test your API functions. All you have to do is you have to do the login, of course, and specify your own URL. But you can use this collection this collection already gives you samples of all the routes available that you can use. And all you need to do is you need to fill it with data, and then you're good to go. So that's quite a nice feature of that Open API spec. You can even go a step further, and there are tools that actually let you create whole applications and clients based on the Open API spec. So you can build the whole PHP client to interact with our REST API. That's also possible. There are tools available for that. So that's the new specification and the documentation here and what you can do with that JSON file. Now specifically for 26.1, the new features we have in there are routes to create a user and to update a user. Now, if you have been with us for quite a while now, you know that we also have a SOAP web service as part of our functionality. It has been there for, I think, 10 or 15 years. And that SOAP web service can be used to handle user management, basically. Users, job functions, user profiles. That SOAP service was intended to create users, update users, delete users, stuff like this. And we have two different APIs, obviously, the SOAP and the REST API, and we only want to deal with one, to be honest. So what we are doing right now is we migrate all the SOAP functions, the SOAP methods into our REST API in order to at one time deprecate our SOAP service, but also to give you the option to work with one single API to do all of what you need to do and not have to use two different APIs. So that's the idea for this. It's I think the SOAP service has like 50 different functions. So we are migrating them one by one. So in each new JobRouter version, you will see some new REST API routes for especially user management, job function management, and so on. So that's the specifically for 26.1, the new feature, those user-specific routes, and all in all, with version 3, which has been first released in 25.2, you get the new documentation, you get the specification, stuff like this. We still have our version 2. That's one last note from me. It also benefits from the new documentation. It also has a specification file that you can use. However, it's not like 100% specified from our side because there are really not a lot of examples in here. The typing is doesn't really match 100% for everything, but we wanted to give you the new documentation also for version 2. So here it is. And one of our goals next to migrating a SOAP service to REST API is also, of course, migrating all version 2 routes to version 3. But again, that's something that we do next to all the other stuff that we do. So each new version, there will be updates on that. So that's for the REST API part, and that concludes my live demo. Let me go back to the slides. I have one last slide for you. So actually I have more than one slide, but these, as I mentioned, are basically just for the handout you will receive later because all of that information I just talked about in my live demo. So last slide here is basically just the release date. When is this release planned? 26.1. It's planned for next week. So Friday, in exactly 1 week from now, Friday next week, that's the planned release date for 26.1. So far, we haven't heard any feedback from beta testers that would keep us from releasing on that date. So we are actually quite sure that this will be the date. It could still be a day later, but it will be the date that we will release this version. The beta version is already available, so anyone who has some time on their hands and they want to already do some sneak peeks and want to test things, you can download the beta version also from our customer support portal. So that's this. And for the release notes, I also put a link here for the release notes. Of course, those are not the English release notes. So you just do this, and that's your release notes. These will also be in the slides that we will send after this webinar. So if you want to check what else we have for this version, you can open up the release notes and take a look. And that's basically it. Now I see we have 4 minutes left. You're lucky. Let me see if there are any questions. I will stop my screen sharing. And then I will open up the Q&A session. We have one question. Okay, it's about AI. Which AI system is JobRouter using? ChatGPT, Claude, etc. Also, is it possible to use our own subscription? So for now, we are using OpenAI. It's basically what's behind that. We are actually using something provided to us by Aptian, Aptian Intelligence Studio. They are providing that AI agent studio where we can build our AI agents, our AI workflows. And as a model, as an AI LLM in the backend, they are using OpenAI. And for right now, it's not possible to use your own subscription. It's for the next 6 months at least. It's our subscription that comes with Aptian. Maybe once we release this also on-prem, we will allow also your own subscription. We will still have to check how this can work. If you want more details on this, I suggest or I recommend that you look at our webinar that we did. It's like an hour long and it talked about this stuff as well. So feel free to take a look. Maybe this answers your question as well. So then let me take a further look. So that's this question. Then another question about recording. Yes, there will be a recording. So once we close this webinar, I think in an hour or two, at least at some point today, you will get an email. Everyone who's registered will get an email, and that email will contain a link to the recording, and it will contain a link. It will contain the attached slides, so you can take a look at all of this again on your own time later on. So it will take an hour or two for me to prepare everything, and then you will get your email. Okay, so I see no more questions. So I think that's it then. In that case, I would like to thank you for your attendance, for your questions, for watching this, for looking at this. I hope everyone found something that they like. Not everything is for everyone, but I hope at least everyone could take one of those 5 highlights. And look forward to that. Look forward to updating JobRouter and making use of that new feature. So thanks again for attending. Have a nice afternoon. Have a nice weekend. And see you soon, maybe for another webinar. Bye-bye.